already added a couple of elements into the design of the first page that is called main page. We added an entry and a button. We have also set the name for a label and an entry, so we can access them from C# and use them inside of the event handler that we also created. The main functionality is also ready as well. It's time for us to start testing this. And to test this, right now we're going to be using Xamarin Live Player. After testing with Xamarin Live Player, we will test with the Android simulator and the iOS simulator. But in case you do want to learn how to use the Xamarin Live Player, these couple of lectures are the ones that will tell you how to do that. Remember that for this, you do need the preview version of Visual Studio on Windows or the alpha channel to be set on Visual Studio for Mac. And that you have to have the Xamarin Live application installed on your iOS or Android device. For example, I have here the Xamarin Live application opened on my iPhone, and it's ready to be paired with Visual Studio. To pair your device with Visual Studio, you have to go to the Tools menu, find the Xamarin Live Player options, and click on Manage Devices. This window will open, and all you have to do is take your device, select Pair to Visual Studio, and the QR code will be very quickly read. And as you can see, on my iPhone it says that it is already connected to Visual Studio, and on Visual Studio I see my iPhone listed in the devices. I can close this window now, and I'm going to navigate to the main page.xaml and evaluate if how it looks is how I wanted it to look. To be able to test this on Xamarin Live Player, the first thing that you need to make sure is that the project that is selected is the one that you will run on your device. For example, right now by default I have the Hello World.Android project selected in this section of Visual Studio. On Visual Studio for Mac you will find it a little bit more to the left, but what you will have is an expandable menu with at least the Android and the iOS projects. In this case, because the phone that I have connected is an iPhone, I want to select the iOS project. Then I will have to select where I want to test this. Next to the list of projects, you will find a list of devices. It is also an expandable menu. And in this case, you will find a list of emulators and devices that are ready for you to test your application on. In this case, I also find the iPhone 7 Plus player, which refers to the Xamarin Live Player that I have selected and that is running on my iPhone. With this selected, you can go to the Tools menu, navigate to Xamarin Live Player, and click on Live Run Current View. This will launch this view directly into your device through Wi-Fi without us needing to connect our device into our computer and without the need to run the application. If you notice, I didn't even click on Run, all I did was select where I want to test this. And the best thing about this is that I am testing an iOS application from Windows without the need of a Mac. I am currently not connected to a Mac. Now, we do find an issue in here, because all we see right now is the button that says hello. We do not see the label and we do not see the entry. And notice what happens when I start clicking or pressing on my screen. This happens because right now the button is using the entire available space, because we are not setting any vertical or horizontal options like we did with the label. It also means that the button is above the entry and the entry above the label. So each of these elements will be hiding the previous one. We have to find a way of making the entry be below the label and the button below the entry and not covering each other. To do that, we're going to introduce containers. Right now, we're actually already using a container, the content page, which is going to contain all of the elements inside. Right now, a label, an entry, and a button. But we have to add another container because the content page doesn't really stack the elements. There is a container that does stack them, and that is called stack layout. Easy to remember, right? If we want to stack elements, we use the stack layout. We create a definition for a container on the same way that we created a definition for the entry or the button. And we write down stack layout. And then we close the definition like this because we're going to be defining all of these elements inside of the stack layout. So we have to create a definition in the way the content page is created. Remember that in this case, we have the opening and the closing of the definition. So in this case, I'm going to cut the closing definition of the stack layout and I'm going to paste it below the definition of the button. And notice that the interface immediately changes. And we are now able to take a look at the entry and the button, but we still do not see the label. And that is because the stack layout by default is set all the way to the top of the interface. So the label is rendered, but it's rendered outside of what we see. What we can do is copy this selection of vertical options center and add it to the stack layout as well. This will center the stack layout vertically into the entire container, which is the content page. And now we are able to see the label as well. To continue testing our application, what we can do is select the entry and start writing something. For example, our names. And then press the Say Hello button. Notice that automatically the text inside the label has changed to Welcome Eduardo, which is what I wrote down inside of the entry. And that is exactly the functionality that I set inside of the button clicked event handler. This means two things. One, we are already able to know when the button is pressed. And two, we have successfully assigned some value to the text. So the functionality of our application is ready. We have also successfully tested our application on Xamarin Live Player. And the Xamarin Live Player has allowed us to test the application without the needing to run the application. And in fact allows us to test an iOS application without the need of a Mac. And by doing this, we saw that we can also see the changes in real time without needing to keep running the application. In the next lecture, we are going to run our application and we're going to take a look at what actually running the application means and what we can do when it is running that we cannot do when we are just previewing the application live.